Fed, well clothed, well paid, secure. Of course, there was nothing wrong for him. He probably never had it so good before.
While American medical teams tended to the abandoned prisoners, other crews were busy shipping out rockets and equipment, desperate to transport it back to the States. They were unable to completely strip the underground factory before the Russians arrived. The Red Army found there was still plenty of material for them to cart away. Both sides now had the rockets, but they still needed the brains that created them. Their number one target, Wernher von Braun, had disappeared with over 100 members of his rocket team. He was rumored to be on his way south, to Bavaria. Several hundred miles away, the agents chasing the German atomic bomb project continued their hunt for Werner Heisenberg. Captured documents had led them to a town called Haigerloch. No one knew how far the Nazis had gone with building a bomb, but they had heard of a flurry of secret activity revolving around a cave underneath the town's castle. The agents found the cave easily enough, but the heavy steel door was padlocked. The colonel in charge, Boris Pash, who died in 1995, described how they eventually got inside the curious cave.
A paper stuck on the door indicated the manager's identity. "Get the fellow whose name is on that paper," I ordered.
They combed the town, searching for the manager. Pash was desperate to get his hands on what lay within the cave and was prepared to do anything.
When the manager was brought to me, he tried to convince me that he was only an accountant. When he hesitated at my command to unlock the door, I said, "Shoot the lock off. If he gets in the way, shoot him."
The manager gave in and opened up the cave. What Alsos discovered inside was so significant, it has now been turned into a museum. Deep in the rocks underneath the castle, the German physicists had built a nuclear reactor. Uranium cubes were lowered into a tank and bombarded with neutrons in an attempt to achieve a chain reaction, unleashing a tremendous amount of energy. Heisenberg's team were just short of enough uranium. A few more tons, and the reactor might have worked. Colonel Pash still needed to interrogate Heisenberg, but their top target had disappeared and was last seen heading for Bavaria to join his family. When the agents started to dismantle the reactor, they were shocked to discover the vital uranium was missing. Marty Previtti's men quickly rounded up most of the other German scientists to try to make them talk.
We captured physicists and interrogated them, and they confessed that they had a stockpile of uranium and they buried it, try to hope that they could hide it and keep it away from us.
After 3 days of questioning, the German physicists finally talked. They directed the interrogators to a field just outside the town. Wary of booby traps, Marty enlisted the help of a local German. After several hours of digging, they finally hit the jackpot. They unearthed more than 2 tons of uranium buried outside Haigerloch.
The Air Force flew it to Great Britain. It's very heavy stuff, so it took 20 of these planes flying round trip several times to carry that much stuff over there.
Most of the valuable uranium was now in Allied hands. But Hitler's top scientists were still at large. A few days before the end of the war, British intelligence unit 30AU was racing to capture one of Hitler's top scientists. Their target, rocket plane designer Helmut Walter, was behind enemy lines in the port of Kiel.
To get hold of Walter, about 6 Marines actually went ahead of the army together with, I think, the SAS, and went straight to Walter's headquarters. They knew where it was. And there was Walter. And he was extremely uncooperative at first. And then after a couple of days, suddenly decided he might as well open up everything he had.
Walter had been working on a radical aircraft, which the British were anxious to learn more about. They also needed someone brave enough to try flying this machine. Test pilot Eric Brown was the man for the job. A legend in aviation, Eric Brown has flown more types of aircraft than anyone else in history. When he flew into Germany in the last days of the war, he was shocked by what he found.
It was like walking into Aladdin's cave as regards advanced aircraft. The airfields we visited were mostly in a state of chaos, but the strange thing was, much to our astonishment, they had not touched any of their advanced jet or rocket aircraft. Now, my only explanation for this is that they were so proud of their achievements in this sector that they wanted us to see what was available, what might have been.
Eric came face to face with one of the strangest looking aircraft in the German Luftwaffe, the Messerschmitt 163, with its rocket engine, designed by Walter.
It was an airplane that made the adrenaline flow, certainly exuded a great challenge to fly. It had a number of revolutionary, innovative features. It had swept wings, but above all, it was rocket-powered, and it landed on a skid.
Eric was desperate to discover how the Me-163 worked, but the more he found out about it, the more he realized this would be a dangerous test flight.
The rocket that Walter designed for that aircraft was a very clever piece of engineering. It was small, it was light, and it was powerful. But because it used an explosive mix of fuels, two substances, C stuff and T stuff, that when mixed together essentially explode and power the rocket, it was known by its pilots as a flying bomb.
The two fuels mixed together to produce 8 minutes of rocket power. The plane could climb 20,000 feet in under 2 minutes, so it could launch surprise attacks on enemy bombers. The pilot sat in a cockpit surrounded by rocket fuel. It was not a plane for the faint-hearted. Over 10 German pilots had died attempting to fly the 163. Most were killed during takeoff or landing. But this didn't seem to worry Eric Brown.
I was encouraged by the boffins who were in on the act to have a go at this. And there was nobody around to stop us. That was the real thing. The noise really was ear-splitting. And one felt, as you sat in this, with this aircraft rocking under this power, it was like unleashing an atom bomb, I think. And I think one has to say you felt a little apprehensive about what was lying ahead, but the temptation was so huge to have a go at this thing.
Eric Brown became the first and only Allied pilot to fly this rocket-powered plane.
It was rather like being in charge of a runaway train. I felt, I'd never had this feeling with any other airplane, that it was a jump ahead of me all the time. And I was catching up with it. It really took your breath away.
Having assessed the plane and captured the man who designed it, the British were now ready to exploit this new rocket technology. By now, most of Germany had fallen to the Allies. The Red Army had surrounded Berlin and were beginning to push towards the center. 60 miles away, American and Russian troops met up for the first time on the river Elbe.